أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to another program, Light of Islam. In our program today, we have Brother Mokhtar, who is a student of Ma'ahad al-Ansar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mokhtar.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, thank you for honoring the invitation once more in our program, Light of Islam.
You're welcome.
MashaAllah, Brother Mokhtar will be giving us some recitation of the verses from the Quran. فليتفضل يا مختار.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كافها يا عين صاد. ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا إذ نادى ربه نداء خفيا قال رب إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيبا ولم أكن بدعائك رب شقيا وإني خفت الموالي من ورائي وكانت امرأتي عاقرا فهب لي من لدنك وليا يرثني ويرث من آل يعقوب واجعله رب رضيا يا زكريا إنا نبشرك بغلام اسمه يحيى لم نجعل له من قبل سميا قال رب اجعل لي آية قال آيتك ألا تكلم الناس 3 ليال سويا فخرج على قومه من المحراب فأوحى إليهم أن سبحوا بكرة وعشيا يا يحيى خذ الكتاب بقوة وآتيناه الحكم صبيا وهنانا من لدنا وزكاة وكان تقيا وبرا بوالديه ولم يكن جبارا عصيا وسلام عليه يوم ولد ويوم يموت ويوم يبعث حيا.
MashaAllah. Thank you very much, Mokhtar, for that wonderful recitation. May Allah reward you and increase you with the knowledge of Quran.
Ameen.
Now, we'll have a short break, inshallah.
وللدار الآخرة خير للذين يتقون أفلا تعقلون وللدار الآخرة خير للذين يتقون أفلا تعقلون وللدار الآخرة خير للذين يتقون أفلا تعقلون.
Welcome back. Now, the topic we'll be dealing with today is who should bring up your child. And in our studio today, we have Sheikh Yusuf Kudi Bira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ya Sheikh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah. Ya Sheikh, thank you for honoring this invitation on our program, Light of Islam.
You're welcome. Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
MashaAllah. Now, Ya Sheikh, the topic and the time that we are in is a time that children are going back to school. So we decided to come up with this topic, who should bring up your child?
No.
Naam ya Sheikh, as Muslims, who should bring up our children?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin. Nabina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa ala tabi'ina wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh once more.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a lot, who has given us the opportunity to sit here to talk about the importance, or who has the responsibility, or who should bring up our children. First of all, a child is a blessing. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given somebody a child, then Allah has blessed that family or those parents. So they should first of all consider that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them a lot. And it is also a responsibility at the same time. And if they don't take care of that responsibility, it will also become a ni'mah. This is why they say al-awladu ni'mah wa niqmah. They are blessings. They can also be niqmah, meaning source of wrath or perishness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us.
Amen.
So if it is ni'mah, or what we have said as Allah's blessing, then how do you handle it? That's where we said it is a responsibility. So who has that responsibility to bring up your child? Islamic psychologists, sociologists, and ulama, they have dwelled on that a lot. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned much about children, much about parents, the relationship their children, and so on, based on that. And the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given a lot of light on that. So, but that responsibility, first of all, is on who? Is it an individual responsibility, or it's a general responsibility? It is vice versa. That is, first of all, it is on the parents, because they are the people who have that ni'mah. And then you have the other agencies. First of all, the agencies of the child upbringing starts at home. The child learns everything at home, everything, how to talk, how to do everything. So normally the child is supposed to be brought up from the house. They have their tarbiyah, meaning they are brought up Islamically from the house. Who has to do that? Is the parents. And the house, as one of the agencies or the components or the pillars of child upbringing, the greatest one that can ever exist, the parents are the masters. And they have to do that. And the responsibilities there is, first of all, to teach their children to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and make their home an Islamic home, a home that has iman, that the child leave iman in the house. Everything Islamically, everything they do it Islamically. That's the first thing. First of all, how to dress, like the children. The mother is supposed to be cautioned on how to dress them, how they should cover their nakedness, and so on. It's all part of the upbringing. And it's a whole process. It's not something that is done one day or you command and so on. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, when talking about the child and concerning prayer, he said, Muruhum bisalati hum abna'u sab'a, aw abna'u sab'a, واضربوهم عليها وهم أبناء عشر يعني إذا بلغوا عشر واضربوهم عليها. Command your children to pray from the age of 7. And at the age of 10, if they don't pray, you beat them. We will come back to that inshallah. But you see that process from the age of 7. You are commanding your child to pray, teaching him how to pray, taking him to the masjid, and so on. A process of 3 years. At the age of 10 now, if he does not pray, then
Can discipline.
You discipline the child.
No.
And the discipline has many ways of discipline.
Exactly.
Yes, some of them can be, or come on that, about that, inshallah. But what I want to emphasize on is that it is a process. If it was not a process, then you cannot discipline your child. First of all, you teach him what is good, and then forbid him what is evil when he is still at that tender age, and then at the later age when he has maturity, he can differentiate, then you now discipline him. So it's a process. From day one of the child, normally, Islamically, some of the hadith, like the hadith da'if, that you make adhan on the ears of the child. The one ear you make adhan, the other you make iqama. Meaning the first thing that the child should hear should be a shahadatain. And then you have the other processes, the aqiqah, all of those Islamic, they have their role in the child upbringing and in the modeling of the child and so on. So the family, first of all, I think we have to talk about a Muslim home, how they will behave in the house, how they will bring up their children, and so on. And then before we go to the community where it is the road, then you have now the community, which is the neighborhood, which is the closest to the home. Before you go to the school, before you talk about the masjid, those are all pillars of child upbringing. You cannot talk of child upbringing, you limit in the house. You can also talk of child upbringing, you limit at the level of the community or at the level of the school. It's a whole system. It's a whole system, but it starts at home.
MashaAllah. Thank you very much, Ya Sheikh. Now, so which school, as you've just mentioned the school, and now that we are in the period where children are going back to school, so which type of schools should we send our children?
Thank you very much. Anyway, we are skipping from the home and the community going to school because of maybe we are at the opening, as you mentioned, or time school days or whatever. We'll still come back to the Muslim home. We'll still come back to the community, inshallah. And also talk about the masjid, on all those roles that those agencies can play, or the role that they have to play in the child upbringing. But the school now, that is related to more to our topic because of the time and the timing of the program. Then we have to say the type of school that you have to send your child surely is the school that the values that you have in the house are the values that are taught in school. Because if what you value in the house is not what is taught in school, then you are destroying the mentality of your child. He will have contradictions, conflicts, and many complexes. Because if you have taken him from your house with a lot of respect and honor, and you take him to that institution which we have called school, that agency of upbringing that we have called a school, and you hand to those personnel there with a lot of respect, telling the child that this is my child, telling them that this is my child, and telling your child that these are the responsible people that will take over your upbringing. They will bring you up, they will teach you, they will show you any good thing in this world. And the child is surprised now that what the lessons, the values, the model, the mode of life is different. For example, then you have put that child in a dilemma. I think we parents, we should think about that. And at times, especially we Muslims, we don't have the schools, we don't have those schools, we don't have those institutions, those valuable things that normally the first universities were created by the Muslims. Till today, the numerals are from the Arabic numerals that we use. The Latin, all Latin languages are using the Arabic numerals. I don't know whether Russian is a Latin language, and I don't know the numerals that they are using, but French, English, Spanish, and so on, they are using the Arabic numerals, and so on. They rely on that culture, that civilization. We were saying, but we don't have those institutions. We have forgotten them. We have turned them away. But we still take our children to non-Muslims who have their values, who have what they value. We don't value it. What they honor, we don't honor it. What they see is blasphemy, we see it good. What we see as blasphemy, they see it as monotheism. For example, to say God has a child is an act of disbelief in Islam, but it is an act of belief in some religions. To say 3 in 1 is a disbelief in Islam. It's an act of disbelief. But some religions is categorical. If you don't believe in that, you are a disbeliever in their religion.
No.
And so on. For example, carrying the cross is an honor to Christians.
No.
But in Islam, it is a disbelief. So we cannot go to those institutions, those houses, and then impose on them that this is my child, he is a Muslim, meaning he has different values. He has different culture. For example, shaving the hair for the girl child. And then the type of dressing now, that the dressing code that most of the mainstream, I call them, the mainstream religion, they consider is not good in Islam. For example, exposing, especially for the females, they don't have to expose themselves, but it's very normal in those religions. So you cannot go to that mainstream and then try to impose to them.
No.
It's true that integration is very good, it's important, but it should not jeopardize somebody's values and religion.
No.
Yes, there should be tolerance. That tolerance does not mean that I have to worship what you worship what I worship. No, I recognize your values. Yeah. I recognize your acts of worship, but I don't do them. You do the same.
No.
So, in Islam, as I'm saying, as a Muslim, if you take your child to an institution where what is haram, as we have illustrated for you, or what is an act of disbelief is a belief in that institution, then what are you doing? For example, if you take your child to an institution where they have another prophet after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's an act of disbelief.
Exactly.
But you take your child, do you think they will teach without bringing their values into the institution?
Absolutely not.
It is part of their life.
No.
You cannot deprive them from their life.
No.
That their religion, their cultures is part of their life. As far as your own religion, your culture is also part of your life.
No.
So that's where normally the conventional education is supposed to be conventional in the values. You take the container, your own container, and you fill the water. The water remains the same.
No.
I can say that the conventional education is that water.
No.
If you take a glass, a clean glass, and carry that water, it will be clean.
No.
But if you take that glass that has wine, for example, or honey, or milk, that water will be contaminated with that substance in it.
No.
So that conventional education is that water.
No.
So normally, the glass has to maintain its values so that the water will be clean, maintained in its origin. No. I don't know whether you are getting me.
No, I'm getting you very sharp.
Okay.
I'm getting you very well.
This is why we are saying if they exist, any institution that has those your values, I think that is the best place to send your child. Why? Because what you are teaching at home is an upgrade in the institution. The child has started the foundation. You have started the foundation in the house, the Quran, the belief, the Islamic belief, that culture there. When he goes to school, the Muslim teachers who are teaching that child the conventional education that is usually called secular education. Secularism means disbelief. Secularism was it started in France when they refused the church and so on. So I don't call it secular education. And they call it Western education. I don't call it Western education because it has been existing and it has existed elsewhere and so on. We are not in that topic anywhere, but I'm saying I prefer calling it conventional education. So people call it secular, they call it Western education, but it is conventional education, more better. So that conventional education, if the teacher has the values of the parent, surely that child will not fall in those complexes that we have mentioned, will not be a victim of those dilemmas that he will not answer and so on. Because the child, you tell your child to respect the teacher. You tell your child to respect any elder. And if the child now is in front of a respected personality, and that personality now is saying what is contrary to the child's belief, you can imagine the scenario or how the child mentality, because we are talking about the level of understanding and so on. So normally as a Muslim, if you cannot create your own institution that you bring Muslim teachers who can teach all the subjects, the conventional subjects and so on, then if there's one that exists, you better send your child there. And be part of it. Because that one, your values are maintained, your religion is maintained, your cultures are maintained. Imagine if a teacher comes in and in digression, because when you are teaching, you digress. As I have been victim of that, for example, Bororos. They mock at your culture. Yes, I tell them that it's normal. Because if I come from the bush, my environment impose on me a type of manners that I have to behave because of the environment that I live. What is normal in the bush is not normal in town, in the urban area. If I am alone, what is normal for me is different when I grow in a community. So now if I come, you are mocking at me based on your own environment. And if you go to me, I mock you based on my environment. I think that's illogical. Normally, if we are talking about education, I think you have to adapt to my environment. I have to tell you how things move here. Then after I can judge you or discipline you if needs arise. But that has not been done. If I come from the bush from day one and you want me to behave like somebody who has grown up in town, and then you even mock at me that I am a villager, is it a crime to be a villager? It is only in Africa that people mock at people that you this villager. It is not a crime to be a villager. So what I want to say or what I want to illustrate is that the values that you have in the house, take your child to that institution where those values are maintained. The belief that you have. Take your child to that institution where those beliefs are maintained. So that you don't put your child in a confusion. And now that most of the parents don't even care about their children, when they come home, they don't even ask them what they have learned and so on. For example, philosophy, part of philosophy in high school, they talk about that God does not exist, that there is no creator. That is religion. It is their own religion, and it is secularism that I'm talking about. If somebody does not have those proof
No.
on the existence of the Creator,
No.
then what will be the outcome?
Catastrophe.
That is the philosophy that is taught in high school, and you must learn it. Even though it is, they tell you the proof of those who say it does not exist, and the proof of those who say he exists, and so on. They borrow the one of Imam Al-Ghazali, and so on.
MashaAllah. Thank you very much, Ya Sheikh.
No.
From what I've understood, from what you have just said now, is these are the dangers of sending your children to the non-Islamic institutions. So,
Now,
go ahead, Ya Sheikh.
okay, yes, the dangers we have already illustrated, meaning your child will be having problems, and he will not even know who to follow.
No.
He will not know, he will not have a role model in his life, because normally the father or the teacher is supposed to be the role model. Nowadays people take decisions and so on because of the social media. We'll come back to that if we are talking about the home and so on, the role of the home. If the child has not taken the father as a role model, normally it is the teacher or a senior in that institution, or a personality related to that education and so on. So if that child happens to find a problem in relating the cultures, the values of the parent and the values of the teachers and so on, he will have a problem of who to follow and who to believe.
No, especially now that we are in the social media world,
yes,
where everything is exposed on social media.
Yes.
Now, so how do we like orientate our children when it comes to that issue of social media, Yasha?
Yes, social media, I think there's an anecdote that ulamas have mentioned it. I heard it from one of my Sheikh, a very young Sheikh, who told me that it is Ibn al-Qayyim who said it. May Allah bless all Islamic scholars.
Amen.
And guide us to the straight path. Amen. And accept all our good deeds. He said that Ibn al-Qayyim said that a spring, you call it spring, they call it ice of water, started out of the city, and the city had a meeting how to fight that water. They divided into three. One of them said, let's cover the spring or the ice of that water. So when covering it, if they close this one, another one comes out there, and they failed. The other group said, let us erect a high fortress around the city so that the water will never come in. They failed because the water will gather and then
come
over the city and do worse than it could have done. They failed. The other party said, let us channel the water. Those are the successors. So in ideologies, in terms, in the period of social media, you do channeling. What do you channel? How do you do it? You orient them to the best social media, maybe pages, groups, or whatever. The television and so on. That's the only thing you can do, because you cannot stop your child from watching television. If he don't watch it in the house, he will see it. He will go to the neighbors and see it. If you deprive your children from using your phones, your smartphone, they will take from another person and use, and you don't know what they will be watching there. So normally you should feed them, give them your own type of food, so that if they go to somebody's house and they don't find that taste, they will say, this food does not taste very well. We prefer the food of our house and so on, because they are used to it. So I think that's the best way to deal with social media. You should not deprive them, but orient them to the best. And those such groups, everything, it exists. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
MashaAllah. Thank you very much, Ya Sheikh. We have just heard what Sheikh have said concerning the child upbringing. So it's very important for us to send our children to Islamic institution and to also orientate our children in the house towards the right things when it comes to social media. Let's have a short break.
وَلَلدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ أفلا تعقلون وللدار الآخرة خير للذين يتقون أفلا تعقلون.
If you are watching us, whether on our YouTube channel or on the Facebook page, don't hesitate to share this program because a lot of people will benefit from it. Now, Ya Sheikh, we have talked on issues of social media and where to send our children. So, failing to do these things, what can be the consequences, Ya Sheikh?
Okay, when we started talking, I think we mentioned that there are many pillars of child upbringing, or we said agencies, as the sociologists call it, and even some psychologists. So there's a community that brings up that children. If your child comes to you and asks you a question and you don't answer that question, know that the child will ask another person and you will not know the answer. He might ask somebody, for example, somebody who has a belief contrary to your own belief, and they give him the wrong answer. He can meet a criminal and the criminal gives him a wrong answer. So when the child is going to school, you have the street. That street is the community. That community now, that is where the big problem is also. But if everybody start at home and you bring up your child in the good manner, surely your neighbors did the same and so on. So you have a good community. And even if that is not the case, when your children, when people observe your children, they want your children to be like your children. And in that manner, they will now start changing and so on. So it is within, without. It is not without, within. It is inside, outside. You start from yourself. You start from your house. And then you go out. Surely the dangers of neglecting one's child, of not taking that child, taking care of the child in the house, upbringing the child Islamically, teaching him Islamic values and so on, will lead that child to take anything from the community. Because when the child goes from the community and takes something wrong, you are supposed to correct it in the house. Because we humans, we learn by seeing. We learn by seeing naturally, especially children. They really copy from everybody, especially us, the parents. They copy from us. So if we are not their role models, and they have people in the community that they admire, like those days of films and so on, that has gone by. We have now, I don't know, with the social media, I don't know, everything is inside. People are waiting for like. So everything is in the social media. Is even more than the cinematography that we used to have. In those days, people, when they watch films a lot, they have the actors of those films to be their role models. But nowadays, you cannot even determine who is the role model of a child. This is where you have to be very keen on the child upbringing. From the house to the school, for example, or to the masjid, is the community.